The moment my biological mother realized she had truly lost me forever wasn't when I blocked her number. It wasn't when I refused to invite her to my wedding. And it wasn't even when security escorted her out in front of 200 guests. No, it happened when the announcer stepped up to the microphone and proudly said, "Please welcome the parents of the bride, Richard and Alina Morrison." And my mother understood those weren't honorary titles. They were legal, official, permanent. But that happened 5 years after the phone call that shattered everything I thought I knew about family. At the beginning, I was just a 27-year-old woman standing barefoot in a tiny Boston apartment holding a non-refundable plane ticket home for Thanksgiving. My name is Tori Thatcher, at least it was back then. 5 years ago, my mother called me 3 days before Thanksgiving and said 7 words that changed the course of my life forever. "Don't come home this year. Victoria doesn't want drama." No explanation, no apology, just rejection delivered in the same calm tone she used to discuss grocery lists or weather forecasts. I actually laughed at first, because honestly, the human brain does strange things when pain arrives too suddenly. "What?" My mother sighed impatiently. "Victoria is pregnant again. She doesn't need stress right now." Stress, interesting word. Because according to my family, asking why I was excluded from my sister's baby shower counted as stress. Asking why my parents missed my college graduation counted as making things about myself, having feelings at all. That counted as drama. I stood there beside my kitchen counter staring at the snow outside my apartment window while something cold settled slowly into my chest. "Mom," I whispered, "I already bought my ticket." "Then refund it." Her voice hardened immediately. "We're trying to keep the peace." Funny, families like mine always called exclusion peace, silence respect, and emotional neglect being mature. I gripped the edge of the counter tighter. "I haven't even spoken to Victoria in months." "Exactly," my mother snapped. "And let's keep it that way." God, that part still hurts. Not because my sister excluded me, I expected that from Victoria. No, it hurt because my mother said it like my absence was the obvious solution. Like removing me from the family table was completely reasonable. Like I was the problem everyone quietly tolerated until holidays made my existence inconvenient. Then she said the sentence that finally broke something inside me. "You know how you get." I froze. "How I get?" My voice cracked slightly. "Mom, I asked one question last year." "Yes, and you made your sister cry." Silence. Heavy silence. Because suddenly I understood something I'd spent my entire childhood trying not to see. There was no version of me that would ever fully belong in that family. Not quiet enough, not agreeable enough, not small enough. I spent 27 years trying to become easier to love, and somehow I was still too much. My mother sighed again like she was exhausted by my existence. "Please don't make this difficult, Tori." Too late. It had always been difficult, just not for them. Before I tell you what happened after that phone call, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. And if you've ever felt like the unwanted person in your family, this story is for you. After my mother hung up, I just stood there in silence. The apartment smelled like pumpkin spice from the candle I'd lit that morning, trying to force myself into a holiday mood. Half-packed bags sat beside my couch. I'd bought new boots for Connecticut snow, even picked up my dad's favorite whiskey as an early Christmas gift. God, I actually thought I was going home. Then the memories started coming back one after another like some cruel highlight reel. My 16th birthday. Mom canceled my party because Victoria failed a calculus exam and needed emotional support. My college graduation. 4 years of scholarships, 2 jobs, graduating with honors, and my parents arrived 2 hours late because Victoria had a prenatal appointment. Don't be sensitive, Tori. Stop making everything about yourself. Your sister needs us more, every single time. Always Victoria, always her comfort, her feelings, her milestones, and me. I became the daughter expected to understand, the daughter expected to shrink. I sat slowly on the edge of my bed staring at the plane ticket email glowing on my laptop screen. Non-refundable, of course it was. Then I made the mistake of calling my father. Some stupid part of me still believed he might choose me, just once. He answered on the 4th ring. "Hey, kiddo," cautious voice, which meant my mother already talked to him. "Dad, did Mom tell you?" Long silence. Football sounds echoed faintly through the phone in the background. "She mentioned it." That answer alone told me everything. You're okay with this? Another pause. God. My father always paused before disappointing me. You know how your mother is. There it was, his favorite sentence, not defense, not disagreement, surrender. I felt something inside me go strangely calm. Dad, I asked quietly, do you want me there? Silence again. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, then finally, I think it's better if you listen to your mother this year. And honestly, that hurt more than anything else. Because my mother rejected me openly, but my father abandoned me quietly. He always stood in the middle pretending neutrality while still choosing their side every single time. I hung up without saying goodbye. And for a long time, I just sat there in the darkening apartment realizing something devastating. I wasn't being excluded because of one holiday. I was being excluded because my family genuinely believed life was easier without me in it. Thanksgiving morning arrived gray and freezing. Boston looked exhausted under November skies. Snow dusted the sidewalks outside my apartment while muffled laughter echoed faintly through the walls from neighboring families arriving with casseroles and wine bottles. Somebody upstairs was cooking stuffing. Somewhere down the hall, children were running back and forth screaming excitedly about pie. And me? I sat alone at my tiny kitchen table drinking instant coffee beside a phone that stayed completely silent. No text from my mother, no call from my father, not even a fake Happy Thanksgiving obligation message from Victoria. Nothing. Funny how quickly people can erase you once they decide your feelings are inconvenient. Around noon, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. God, I still wish I hadn't. Victoria had already posted family photos. Of course she had. My sister treated social media like official public relations for the Thatcher family image. The picture showed everyone gathered around my parents' dining table in Connecticut. Mom smiling proudly, Dad carving turkey, Victoria holding her toddler beside Brad, perfect lighting, perfect family, perfect holiday. The caption read, "So grateful for the people who matter most." Read. I zoomed in slowly on the photo. 5 chairs, 5 place settings, no empty seat, not even symbolic space where I should have been. That part destroyed me. Because they hadn't simply excluded me, they reorganized the family without me in it, like I'd never existed at all. I closed the app immediately and stared at the ceiling above my couch while tears burned behind my eyes. 27 years old, still heartbroken over people who spent my entire life teaching me I came last. Honestly, that realization felt humiliating. I thought about staying home, ordering delivery, watching movies, pretending the day didn't matter. But another part of me refused. No. If I was going to eat Thanksgiving dinner alone, I wasn't going to do it hidden inside a dark apartment feeling sorry for myself while my family enjoyed their perfect holiday without consequences. I grabbed my coat, because maybe I couldn't control whether I belonged to them anymore, but I could still decide whether I disappeared. That's how I ended up at Harborview Grill, old Boston restaurant near the waterfront. Dark wood walls, golden lights, white tablecloths. The kind of place that somehow smelled permanently like warm bread and red wine. More importantly, it stayed open on holidays. The hostess gave me that look immediately. That soft pity reserved for people eating alone on Thanksgiving. Just one tonight? God, even now I hate that question, just one. Like loneliness needed official confirmation. I nodded quietly. She led me toward the back corner beside a massive family table overflowing with people, wine glasses, and loud overlapping conversations. Perfect. Exactly what I needed while emotionally unraveling. Your server will be right with you? Then suddenly I was alone again, except not really, because the family beside me was impossible to ignore. 3 generations at least, an older couple at the center, adult children, grandkids. A younger man around my age making everyone laugh loudly enough half the restaurant turned toward him. And honestly, watching them physically hurt, not because they were loud, because they looked safe with each other, comfortable. Like belonging came naturally. I didn't know families could feel like that. The older woman kept passing food onto everyone's plates automatically before they even asked. The older man told terrible jokes while the children groaned dramatically. People interrupted each other constantly, not rudely. Familiarity, love without fear underneath it. Foreign concept to me. My turkey dinner arrived beautifully plated. Golden skin, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, perfect. And I couldn't taste any of it. I just sat there pushing food around the plate while trying not to cry in public. Then the thought hit me suddenly, hard enough to steal my breath. This wasn't actually about Thanksgiving, not really. It was about spending 27 years trying to earn love from people who only offered it conditionally. Be quieter. Be easier, be less emotional, need less, feel less. Shrink yourself enough and maybe eventually you'll deserve a seat at the table. Except the shrinking never ended. Because once families benefit from your silence, they start depending on it. The tears came before I could stop them. I turned toward the window, immediately pretending to check my phone while wiping my face with a napkin. Embarrassing, God, I hated crying publicly. Then a voice beside me said gently, "Honey, are you okay?" I looked up instantly. The older woman from the big family table stood beside me, holding her wineglass carefully. Silver hair. Warm eyes, the kind of face that looked like it actually listened when people spoke. "I'm fine," I lied automatically. "Just allergies." One eyebrow lifted slightly. Allergies usually don't make people cry into mashed potatoes on Thanksgiving. And somehow that tiny joke cracked something open inside me. A laugh escaped accidentally, half sob, half exhaustion. The woman softened immediately. "I'm Alina Morrison," she said gently. "Tori?" "Well, Tori," she glanced back toward her family table before looking at me again. "No one should eat alone today." God. Even now those words still hit me emotionally, because my own family spent years making me feel unwanted, and a complete stranger noticed my pain within 30 seconds. I shook my head immediately. "Oh no, I couldn't interrupt your family dinner." "You wouldn't be interrupting." Tiny smile. "I'm inviting." Behind her, the older man waved dramatically. "She won't take no for an answer," he called out. "Trust me, I've been trying for 43 years. The younger man around my age grinned. "He's not exaggerating." Small laughter rippled around the table, warm laughter, not sharp like my family's, not mocking, safe. Alina touched my shoulder lightly. "Come sit with us, sweetheart." And honestly, I had no idea that saying yes to one Thanksgiving dinner was about to change my entire life forever. They made room for me like I'd always belonged there. That's the first thing I remember clearly. Nobody sighed when another chair got squeezed into the crowded table. Nobody looked annoyed. Nobody acted like I was intruding. Someone immediately handed me a fresh plate. Another person passed warm rolls toward me. A little girl slid over without being asked so I'd have more space. It was such a small thing, and somehow it nearly made me cry again. "Everyone, this is Tori," Alina announced warmly as I sat down. The older man beside her smiled first. "I'm Richard Morrison, Alina's husband and resident victim of her aggressive hospitality." "Richard," Alina warned. "What?" "It's true." The whole table laughed, not cruel laughter, not the kind I grew up around where someone always became the joke. This laughter felt different. Inclusive. Then introductions started happening all around me at once. Our son Daniel, his wife Sarah, these two maniacs are Emma and Lucas. The little boy waved mashed potato-covered fingers proudly. "And this troublemaker is our youngest, Marcus," Alina added. The younger man lifted his wineglass toward me. "Welcome to the chaos." Dark hair, easy smile, calm eyes, probably early 30s. And unlike most men who looked at me, Marcus Morrison didn't seem like he was evaluating me. He just looked kind, interesting feeling. Sarah immediately leaned toward me. "So what do you do, Tori?" "Graphic design," I answered. "Mostly freelance work." "That's amazing," Sarah said instantly. Meanwhile, my own mother once described my career as cute little computer art. Funny difference. Emma, the granddaughter, looked at me seriously. "Can you draw princesses?" I laughed softly. "Badly. Mom draws badly too," she announced loudly. "Emma," Sarah groaned while the table erupted laughing again. God, it felt warm there. That's the only word for it. Warms, not because of the restaurant. Because nobody at that table seemed afraid of each other. Richard eventually cleared his throat dramatically. "Attention everyone, I have prepared a Thanksgiving joke." Immediate groans exploded around the table. "No, Dad, don't. Please spare the guest." Richard ignored everyone proudly. "What did the turkey say to the computer?" Marcus covered his face instantly. "Oh my God," Richard grinned. "Google, Google, Google." The children burst into hysterical laughter. Sarah physically leaned against Daniel from embarrassment. Marcus shook his head dramatically, and I laughed, actually laughed, not polite fake laughter, real laughter. The kind that escapes before sadness can stop it. Richard pointed triumphantly around the table. See, Tori appreciates genius. Dad, Marcus sighed, she appreciates pity. Another round of laughter. And suddenly, for the first time all day, I stopped thinking about the Thatchers. No empty chair, no Instagram photo, no phone call, just warmth, conversation, noise, belonging. At one point, Richard raised his wineglass toward me. To unexpected guests. Everyone lifted their glasses. To unexpected guests. God, that nearly broke me emotionally right there, because nobody in my family had ever sounded happy I existed. Dinner stretched slowly the way good holidays do, people interrupting each other, children arguing, football playing quietly from the bar televisions. At some point, Marcus slid the gravy toward me before I asked for it. Tiny gesture, but oddly thoughtful, like he'd been paying attention. Meanwhile, Alina eventually moved into the empty chair beside mine while everyone else debated dessert. "How are you doing, really?" she asked quietly. There it was again. That question, real concern, not performative politeness. I stared down at my wineglass for a second. Honestly, I don't know why I told her the truth. Maybe because Alina Morrison looked like someone safe enough to tell it to. My mother told me not to come home for Thanksgiving. No judgment crossed her face. Only sadness. My sister is pregnant, I continued quietly. Apparently she didn't want stress. Stress, I laughed bitterly. That's what my family calls it when I ask why I'm excluded from things. Alina studied me carefully, and suddenly I had the strange feeling she understood more than I'd actually said out loud. "What does your family usually call your feelings?" she asked softly. God, that question hit hard because nobody had ever phrased it that way before. I swallowed slowly. "Drama," Alina nodded once, interesting reaction, not surprised. Not confused, recognizing, then she said something that permanently changed the way I understood my life. "Tori, I spent 30 years working as a family lawyer." I blinked. "You're a lawyer, retired now," tiny smile. "But I've spent decades watching dysfunctional families assign blame to the healthiest person in the room because that person notices problems everyone else benefits from ignoring." Silence. Absolute silence inside my chest. Because suddenly my entire childhood rearranged itself in my mind. The exclusions, the guilt, the constant accusations that I was too sensitive. Alina leaned closer gently. "People who accuse you of causing drama are often the ones creating it." God. I actually stopped breathing for a second because nobody had ever defended me like that before, not once. Then Alina put her hand softly over mine and said the sentence I needed my entire life. "You are not the problem, sweetheart." And honestly, I almost started crying all over again in the middle of Harborview Grill. The dinner lasted nearly 4 hours. 4 hours. Longer than any Thanksgiving with my biological family ever had. Because Thatcher holidays weren't built around enjoying each other. They were built around performance. My mother monitoring everything. Victoria controlling attention. My father disappearing emotionally behind football games and silence. But the Morrisons, they actually liked being together. We stayed long after dessert arrived. Coffee refills kept appearing. Richard kept sneaking extra pie while Alina pretended not to notice. The kids eventually fell asleep across 2 chairs pushed together near the wall. And through all of it, nobody treated me like an outsider. Not once. At one point, Marcus ended up beside me while the rest of the table argued loudly about whether pumpkin pie was overrated. "It absolutely is," he whispered dramatically. I laughed. "You're brave saying that here. You have no idea, my mother almost disowned me last year for preferring apple pie." "Interesting," he said it jokingly. Like family disagreements could exist without emotional punishment attached. Foreign concept again. Marcus glanced toward me carefully. "You okay?" Simple question. But unlike my family, he waited for the real answer. "I think so," tiny smile. That sounded unconvincing. God, he noticed everything. I looked down at my coffee cup. "Honestly, I think I forgot families could feel nice." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Marcus didn't laugh, didn't dismiss it. He just leaned back slightly studying me. "That bad?" I hesitated. Then finally, "My mother told me not to come home because my sister didn't want drama." Marcus frowned immediately. What drama? That's the funny part. I laughed softly. There wasn't any. His expression changed then, not pity, anger, interesting difference. Because most people pitied me when they heard things about my family. Marcus Morrison looked offended on my behalf. That's cruel. God, such a simple sentence. And somehow hearing someone say it out loud almost hurt worse than the rejection itself. Because deep down, I'd spent years convincing myself my family behavior was normal, necessary, reasonable. Marcus shook his head quietly. Nobody should spend Thanksgiving alone. Funny, Alina said almost the exact same thing earlier. Maybe kindness ran genetically in that family. By the time the restaurant started emptying, snow covered the streets outside completely. Everyone bundled into coats near the entrance while leftover containers got distributed like holiday trophies. Richard handed me an enormous slice of pie wrapped in foil. Emergency rations. Richard, Alina sighed. What? The girl barely ate. God, he noticed too. That almost made me emotional again. As everyone prepared to leave, Alina slipped a cream-colored business card into my hand. Elegant black lettering. Alina Morrison, J.D. Family Law, retired below it, her phone number and home address in Brookline. If you ever need someone to talk to, she said gently, call me. I stared at the card. Why were these strangers being kinder to me in one evening than my own family had been in years? Richard suddenly appeared beside us adjusting his scarf. Sunday dinners every week, he announced proudly. You're invited. Oh no, I couldn't impose. You could, Marcus interrupted immediately. And you should, Alina smiled knowingly. Family isn't blood, Tori, then softly, family is showing up. God. That sentence stayed with me for years. Outside, snow fell heavily across the Boston sidewalks while people hurried toward cars carrying leftovers and sleepy children. I stood there watching the Morrisons gather around each other naturally. Richard helping Alina into her coat, Daniel carrying sleeping kids, Marcus waiting beside the curb making sure everyone got inside safely, nobody competing. Nobody excluding anyone, just care, simple care. And suddenly, for the first time in my entire life, I understood something devastating. I had spent 27 years trying to earn love from people who treated affection like a reward system. Meanwhile, complete strangers offered kindness freely after knowing me 3 hours. That realization changed something permanently inside me. Marcus opened the passenger door of Alina's car before looking back toward me. You coming Sunday? I laughed nervously. Maybe, he smiled slowly. That usually means yes. And honestly, I had absolutely no idea that one Thanksgiving invitation was about to give me an entirely new life. I didn't go to Sunday dinner the next week, or the week after that. Not because I didn't want to, because I was scared. People like me don't trust kindness easily. Not after spending years learning love can disappear the moment you become inconvenient. But Alina called anyway, not pushy, not guilt-tripping, just checking in. How are you doing, sweetheart? Sweetheart, God. My own mother hadn't called me something affectionate in years. By early December, I finally gave in. And I still remember standing outside the Morrison house in Brookline for nearly 5 full minutes before knocking. Beautiful old Victorian home, warm lights glowing through every window, wreath hanging on the front door. It looked like the kind of house where people felt safe. I almost turned around twice. Then the front door opened suddenly. Alina smiled immediately. There you are. And before I could even respond, she pulled me into a hug like I already belonged there. That first Sunday dinner changed everything, not dramatically, not all at once. Slowly, quietly. Like warmth returning to numb hands. Alina took my coat the second I stepped inside while the smell of garlic, rosemary, and fresh bread wrapped around me like something alive. The Morrison house sounded different than mine growing up. Louder but softer somehow, children running upstairs, music playing faintly from the kitchen, Richard yelling at a football game from another room while somebody laughed at him. Nobody sounded afraid. God. That detail kept affecting me over and over. Nobody monitored the emotional temperature constantly. At the Thatcher house, every holiday felt like walking through a room full of invisible tripwires. One wrong comment. One uncomfortable question, one moment of sadness, and suddenly you were ruining the atmosphere. But here, people just existed freely. Alina guided me toward the dining room. We saved you a seat. 3 words, simple. And somehow devastating. Because my entire life I'd been trying to earn one. Dinner that night felt awkward at first, not because the Morrisons made me uncomfortable, because I didn't know how to relax around kindness. Every time someone laughed, part of me instinctively waited for the conversation to turn cruel. It never did. Marcus sat across from me, casually stealing bread from Richard's plate whenever his father got distracted arguing with Daniel about football. "Unbelievable," Richard muttered dramatically. "I raised a thief." "You raised an architect," Marcus corrected. "Very different profession." "Same skill set," Sarah whispered. Everyone laughed again. And slowly, without realizing it, I started laughing too. Real laughter, not careful laughter. Not the kind designed to keep people comfortable around me. After dinner, Richard taught me chess in the living room, apparently terribly. "You sacrifice pieces emotionally," he informed me seriously after destroying my queen in 6 moves. I didn't know that was possible. It absolutely is. You apologize before making aggressive moves. Marcus nearly choked laughing from the couch. "Oh my God, she does." I stared at him. "You noticed that?" "You apologize for existing near doorways," he said. God, that hit too close to home because he wasn't wrong. Years of living around emotionally unpredictable people teaches you to minimize your presence constantly, to shrink automatically. Interesting how quickly the Morrisons noticed behaviors my own family created. By Christmas, Sunday dinners became routine, not obligation, routine. I started bringing dessert sometimes, helping Alina cook, playing card games with Emma and Lucas, and slowly something terrifying started happening. I began looking forward to family gatherings. The Morrisons never made me earn affection. They just gave it. No emotional test, no competition, no punishment for having feelings. Honestly, I didn't know what to do with that at first. Then there was Marcus. God, Marcus Morrison was dangerous in the quietest possible way. Not flashy, not arrogant, just steady. He remembered details, my coffee order, my deadlines. The fact that thunderstorms made me anxious because my mother used to lock herself in her bedroom during fights while Dad disappeared into the garage. He listened carefully when I spoke, like my thoughts mattered. Foreign experience again. One snowy night in February, Marcus drove me home after Sunday dinner because my car battery died. Boston streets glittered under freezing rain while soft jazz played quietly through the speakers. "You seem different lately," he said casually at a red light. I frowned slightly. "How happier?" God, that word startled me because honestly, I hadn't realized it myself yet. Marcus glanced toward me briefly. "You smile more now?" I looked out the window immediately. Nobody had ever said something like that to me before, not once. My family mostly commented on my flaws, my sensitivity, my attitude. Never happiness, never healing. "You know what's weird?" I admitted quietly. "What?" "I stopped checking my phone constantly." Marcus frowned slightly. "For what? For them?" Silence, then softly, "My family." God, saying it out loud made something painfully clear. I used to spend every single day waiting for emotional scraps from people who barely noticed my absence. A text, a call, an apology, anything. And somehow, the Morrisons filled that emptiness so naturally I stopped noticing the silence from the Thatchers. Marcus parked outside my apartment building but didn't turn off the engine immediately. Snow drifted softly across the windshield. "You deserved better than that, Tori." There it was again, that sentence. The Morrisons kept saying things my entire childhood needed desperately. I laughed softly. "You sound like your mother." "Good, she's usually right." Then after a pause, "For what it's worth, we're really glad you showed up that night." We, God. Not they, we. I looked at Marcus sitting there under dim dashboard lights, calm eyes, steady voice, kindness without conditions. And for the first time in years, I felt something terrifyingly close to safety. I didn't hear from my biological family once during those first 6 months with the Morrisons. Not a birthday text, not a Christmas card, nothing. And honestly, that silence told me everything. Because families who love you don't accidentally forget you exist. At first, I kept expecting guilt to hit me eventually, some overwhelming wave of sadness or obligation, but instead I started healing. Quietly. Without realizing it, Sunday dinners became part of my life. Richard teaching me impossible chess openings. Alina pretending not to notice when Marcus and I sat suspiciously close together during movie nights. Emma and Lucas eventually calling me Aunt Tori without anyone correcting them. God, The first time Emma said it, I nearly cried in the Morrison kitchen over mashed potatoes. "Aunt Tori, can you help me with my drawing?" Aunt. Such a tiny word, and somehow it felt more real than daughter ever had in the Thatcher house. Marcus and I became inseparable slowly. No dramatic moment, no sudden confession, just late-night conversations, coffee runs, texting each other random thoughts at 2 a.m., existing beside each other naturally. Like we'd known each other longer than we actually had. One spring afternoon, Alina and I sat on the back porch drinking tea while tulips pushed through the garden soil. Richard and Marcus argued loudly inside over baseball. Honestly, the Morrison house always sounded alive. "Have you heard from your parents?" Alina asked gently. I stared at the birds near the fence for a second before answering. "No, not bitterness, just fact, and I haven't reached out either." Alina nodded slowly. No judgment, never judgment. "Do you want to?" Interesting question, because deep down part of me still did. Not because they deserved reconciliation, because children never completely stop wanting their parents to choose them, even adult children, especially adult children. "Sometimes," I admitted quietly. "Usually late at night." Alina stayed silent, letting me continue. "I'll think about calling my mother and explaining everything differently somehow." I laughed softly at myself. Then I remember there's nothing to explain. She understood perfectly, she just didn't think hurting me mattered. God, saying it out loud still hurt. Alina reached over, squeezing my hand gently. "That's a painful realization." "It is." Then after a long pause, "Everyone says family is family no matter what." Alina made a soft, thoughtful sound. "You know," she said carefully, "I spent decades helping people legally protect the families they built, not necessarily the ones they were born into." I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Tiny smile. "The law recognizes chosen family in many ways." Interesting wording, chosen family. At the time, I didn't fully understand what she meant. Not yet, but the sentence stayed with me. Everything about the Morrisons stayed with me, especially Marcus. By our second year knowing each other, everyone already acted like we were together long before we officially admitted it ourselves. Sarah caught us sitting too close on the couch one Sunday and literally smirked at Alina across the room. Richard started making terrible young love jokes every dinner. Emma asked if Marcus was finally going to marry Aunt Tora yet. God, children really destroy subtlety effortlessly. But honestly, the truth was already there. Marcus became the person I called first with good news and bad news, and random thoughts and stupid jokes. He became home before I even realized it. Then one night, everything changed. Marcus invited me to dinner at Harborview Grill, same restaurant, same corner near the windows. I laughed immediately, sitting down. "This feels suspiciously symbolic." "That's because it is." God, he looked nervous. Marcus Morrison never got nervous. He kept adjusting his napkin while the server poured wine. Finally, he looked at me directly. "5 years ago, my mother walked over to your table because she saw someone hurting." I swallowed hard instantly. Marcus continued quietly. "But I think all of us knew something else too." "What?" "That you belonged with us." God, I actually stopped breathing for a second because nobody had ever spoken about me like that before. Belonged, not tolerated, not included conditionally. Belonged. Marcus reached across the table, taking my hand gently. "I've been trying to figure out how to say this for months." My heart started pounding immediately. "Tori, I want to spend the rest of my life choosing you every single day." God. Tears hit instantly. Marcus smiled softly. "I know your family spent years making you feel unwanted." His thumb brushed against my hand gently. "But I need you to understand something." "What?" "You will never have to earn love with me." And honestly, that sentence shattered me emotionally, because I didn't even realize how exhausted I was from trying to deserve affection constantly. Marcus pulled out a small velvet box carefully. "Tori Thatcher," his voice shook slightly. "Will you marry me?" I started crying before he even opened the ring box. Not graceful crying either. Complete emotional collapse inside Harborview Grill while strangers absolutely pretended not to stare. "Yes," I whispered immediately, then louder, "Yes." The restaurant erupted, applauding around us. And suddenly I noticed Alina and Richard sitting in a nearby booth, already holding champagne glasses. Of course they knew. Alina Morrison looked at me with tears in her eyes, like this moment mattered to her personally. And honestly, that's when I fully understood something life-changing. The Morrisons weren't treating me like a guest anymore. They already saw me as family wedding planning started almost immediately. And honestly, it terrified me, not because of the dress, or the venue, or the guest list chaos, because weddings force you to confront family publicly. Every invitation, every seating chart, every speech, all of it asks the same painful question: who belongs to you? Marcus and I chose a vineyard in Napa Valley for the ceremony: rolling hills, white roses, golden California sunlight. Beautiful, peaceful, nothing like the emotional war zone I grew up inside. Alina threw herself into planning with terrifying levels of organization. Spreadsheets, color palettes, cake tastings. Richard mostly contributed by stealing appetizers during vendor meetings and pretending not to. Typical. One evening, I sat alone in my apartment staring at the wedding invitation draft glowing on my laptop screen. Parents of the bride, blank space. God, that stupid blank line nearly broke me emotionally, because technically Robert and Linda Thatcher still existed, biologically, but they hadn't spoken to me in over 2 years. No birthdays, no holidays, no congratulations after my engagement announcement online. Nothing. Meanwhile, the Morrisons had become my actual family in every way except legally. I kept staring at the empty line while panic slowly climbed into my chest. Marcus found me like that later that evening. "You okay?" I turned the laptop toward him silently. He read the blank section immediately. Then his face softened. "Oh, yeah, oh, I can't put their names there," I whispered. God, the guilt attached to that sentence shocked me. Even after everything, part of me still felt cruel for excluding people who excluded me first. Marcus sat beside me quietly. "You know you don't owe them that title." "I know, but knowing something logically and emotionally are very different experiences." A few days later, Alina found me pacing around the Morrison living room holding invitation samples. "What's troubling you, sweetheart?" I finally told her everything. The blank line, the guilt, the impossible feeling of publicly acknowledging parents who emotionally abandoned me years ago. Alina listened carefully the entire time. Then she said softly, "Do you remember what I told you once about chosen family?" I frowned slightly. "That the law recognizes the families people build?" She nodded. "Yes." Then calmly, "Adult adoption exists for exactly that reason." Silence. I stared at her. "What?" Alina folded her hands gently. "Adult adoption is a legal process where a consenting adult becomes the legal child of another family." My heart started racing immediately. New birth certificate, legal next of kin, official parent-child relationship, everything. "That's a real thing," I whispered. Alina smiled softly. "Very real." God. I looked around the Morrison living room, suddenly unable to breathe normally. Richard asleep in the recliner, Marcus arguing with Daniel in the kitchen, Emma coloring on the floor. Home. The realization hit me all at once. This family already chose me emotionally. The law would simply acknowledge what already existed. My voice cracked immediately. "Alina," she looked at me carefully, and before I could even fully ask, tears filled her eyes too. "We've considered you our daughter since the first Thanksgiving," she whispered. God, I completely broke down crying. Because my entire life I thought being loved meant constantly proving your worth. Meanwhile, these people chose me simply because they cared. No conditions, no competition, no emotional punishment, just love. Richard woke up halfway through my emotional collapse, looking deeply confused. "Why is everyone crying?" Marcus looked at him calmly. "Mom and Dad are adopting Tori." Richard blinked once, then immediately started crying too. Honestly, the Morrisons cried constantly for a family that laughed so much. The adoption process took several months, paperwork, court appearances, legal filings, but strangely it never felt clinical. It felt sacred. Like healing becoming official. The day the judge finalized everything, Alina squeezed my hands tightly inside the courtroom while Richard kept pretending he had allergies. Sure, Richard, allergies. When the documents were signed, I legally became Tori Morrison. New birth certificate, new legal parents, new family, officially. And honestly, walking out of that courthouse felt more emotional than my college graduation. Because for the first time in my life, I belonged somewhere completely, no conditions attached. The wedding invitations finally arrived 2 months later. Beautiful cream-colored paper with elegant gold lettering. And there, printed clearly beneath my name, stood the line that healed something inside me forever. Parents of the bride, Richard and Alina Morrison below it in smaller text, the family who chose her. God. I stared at that invitation for nearly 10 full minutes, crying at my kitchen table. Because after 27 years of feeling unwanted, someone finally chose me first. I should have known the Thatchers would eventually find out about the wedding. Families like mine always ignored you until public image became involved. 3 months before the ceremony, my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. The first message from my sister in almost 3 years. Did you know Tori is getting married? That was it. No congratulations, no apology, just sudden interest now that other people might notice my absence publicly. I stared at the screen for several seconds, then blocked the number. A week later, my mother called 5 times in one afternoon. I let every call go to voicemail. Finally, a text arrived. Why didn't you tell us we're your family, God? That sentence actually made me laugh out loud. Family, interesting timing, 3 years of silence. 3 years pretending I didn't exist. And suddenly now they remembered they had another daughter. I deleted the message without responding. Marcus found me staring at my phone that evening while we folded seating charts at the dining room table. Everything okay? My biological family found out about the wedding. He sighed quietly. Exactly. What do you want to do? Interesting question, because Marcus always asked what I wanted first, not what was fair, not what kept the peace. Me, honestly, I already knew the answer. Nothing. I set my phone face down. I don't owe them invitations. Marcus nodded immediately, no hesitation. Then they don't get invitations. God, simple support still shocked me sometimes. A month later, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. And honestly, that's when I realized something important. Linda Thatcher never truly believed consequences applied to her. I opened the door expecting a package delivery. Instead, there she stood, gray coat, perfect makeup. That same disappointed expression she wore my entire childhood. Tori. The words sounded strange coming from her now, not affectionate, possessive. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? She pushed past me into the apartment without permission immediately. Classic Linda, ignoring boundaries while accusing everyone else of selfishness. You're getting married without telling your own mother? I closed the door slowly behind her. We haven't spoken in 3 years. And whose fault is that? God. There it was, accountability avoidance in record time. I counted silently to 5 before answering. Yours? Linda's eyes immediately swept across the apartment. Photos on shelves, Marcus and me at the beach, Christmas with the Morrisons. Sunday dinners, family vacations. Evidence everywhere that I built a life without them. Her expression darkened instantly. Who are these people? Interesting question. Not are you happy, not how have you been, just suspicion. I met her eyes evenly. My family. Something flashed across her face then, not guilt, jealousy. You already have a family. No, I answered softly. I had relatives. Silence, heavy silence, because for the first time in my life I stopped softening the truth for her comfort. Linda crossed her arms defensively. You're still upset about Thanksgiving? Upset, God. Reducing years of rejection into one misunderstanding? That was one holiday, she snapped. You can't punish people forever. I stared at her quietly, interesting. She remembered one Thanksgiving, I remembered an entire childhood. My 16th birthday, college graduation, every holiday where Victoria mattered more. Linda rolled her eyes immediately. There you go again, keeping score. No, I was remembering. People who benefit from your silence always call memory holding grudges. I walked toward the front door, opening it calmly. You're not invited to the wedding. Her jaw literally dropped. Excuse me, you heard me. How dare you? Interesting, not I'm sorry, not can we fix this, just outrage that access to me had finally become restricted. Linda stepped closer, lowering her voice dramatically. I'm your mother, God. That sentence used to destroy me emotionally. Now it just sounded biologically accurate. You stopped acting like my mother years ago. Silence, actual silence. Because I don't think anyone had ever spoken to Linda Thatcher that directly before. Then she hissed, "This is humiliating." And honestly, that's when I finally understood her completely. Not once during that conversation did she ask if I was happy, only whether she looked bad. Image, always image. I looked directly at the woman I spent my childhood trying desperately to please, and calmly answered, "Now you know how exclusion feels." Then I stepped aside and pointed toward the hallway. "Goodbye, Mom." And for the first time in my entire life, Linda Thatcher realized she no longer controlled access to me. By the time I walked down the vineyard aisle, the sun was beginning to set across Napa Valley. Golden light spilled through the hills behind the ceremony arch while soft piano music drifted through the air. And honestly, everything felt strangely calm, not because the day had been perfect, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of losing people by being fully myself. Richard stood beside me at the top of the aisle waiting to walk me down. Black tuxedo, red eyes, absolutely failing to hide that he'd been crying again. "You okay?" I whispered. He laughed shakily. "Nope." "God," I smiled instantly. Richard offered his arm carefully. And then quietly, so only I could hear, he said, "Thank you for letting me be your dad today." That sentence shattered me emotionally, because he didn't say, "I deserve this." He said, "Thank you." I squeezed his arm tightly. "You've been my dad for years." God. Richard actually had to look away for a second after that. Then the ceremony coordinator gave us the signal. The music swelled softly, and the announcer stepped toward the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," the entire vineyard fell silent. Then came the moment that changed something inside me forever. "Please rise and welcome the parents of the bride, Richard and Alina Morrison." Silence, tiny, sharp, powerful. Because everyone heard it. Parents of the bride, not honorary, not family friends. Parents, officially, legally, permanently. Across the vineyard entrance, Linda Thatcher stood frozen beside my father near the back row. And suddenly, for the first time, my mother understood what she truly lost. Not access, not control, me. Richard walked me slowly down the aisle while guests smiled through tears around us. At the altar, Marcus looked completely overwhelmed emotionally. Honestly, so did I. The sunset lit the vineyard's gold behind him while he whispered softly as I reached him, "You're breathtaking." God. After years of being treated like I was too much, Marcus Morrison looked at me like I was something precious. The ceremony itself felt dreamlike, warm wind, soft music. Emma scattering flower petals aggressively off pattern while Lucas tried not to trip carrying the rings. Perfect chaos, perfect love. Then came the vows. Marcus went first, and honestly, there are some moments that permanently divide your life into before and after. This was one of mine. He took my hands carefully. "Tori," his voice shook immediately. "5 years ago, my mother saw a woman crying alone on Thanksgiving." Soft laughter moved through the guests. Marcus smiled faintly, "But I saw someone trying desperately to convince herself she didn't deserve better." God, tears hit instantly. Marcus squeezed my hands gently. "You spent so many years believing love had to be earned." His eyes filled slightly. "So I promise you this for the rest of our lives." Silence. "You will never have to earn it with me." That did it. I completely broke emotionally. Actual tears, laughing through crying, total collapse. Even Alina started crying again beside the front row while Richard handed tissues down the aisle dramatically. Marcus smiled softly through tears himself. "I choose you exactly as you are," he whispered. "Every version, every scar, every feeling." God, nobody had ever loved me out loud before. Then it was my turn. I looked at Marcus standing there beneath California sunlight, steady, kind, safe, and honestly struggled to speak for a second. "My whole life," I whispered, "I thought love meant becoming smaller." Absolute silence across the vineyard. "I thought if I needed less, felt less, took up less space." My voice cracked. "Eventually people would keep choosing me." Marcus closed his eyes briefly hearing that. Then I smiled softly at him. "But you and your family taught me something different." I glanced toward Alina and Richard, both openly crying now. Real love doesn't ask people to shrink. God, even the guests were crying at this point. I laughed softly through tears. "Marcus Morrison, thank you for making me feel safe enough to exist fully." Then quietly, "And thank you for loving me before I fully knew how to love myself." The officiant barely got through the ceremony after that. Honestly, half the vineyard emotionally collapsed. When Marcus kissed me, the crowd erupted cheering loud enough, birds scattered from nearby trees. And suddenly it was over. Or maybe for the first time, it was finally beginning. Later that night during the reception, I stepped outside alone for a few minutes while music echoed softly from inside the ballroom. Warm California air drifted through the vineyards. Then I heard footsteps behind me, my father. Robert Thatcher stopped several feet away quietly, not demanding, not defensive, just sad. "The ceremony was beautiful," he said softly. "Thank you." Silence stretched between us one last time. Then my father looked toward the ballroom windows where the Morrisons laughed together inside. "You know," he whispered, "I used to think keeping the peace made me a good father." God, that hurt, because it explained everything. Robert swallowed hard. "But protecting comfort isn't the same thing as protecting your child." "No, it isn't," he nodded slowly to himself. Then after a long pause, "I hope they love you the way you always deserved." Tears burned my eyes immediately. "They do, and honestly, that was enough." My father smiled sadly. Then for the first time in years, he hugged me, not quick, not awkward, real, and before leaving, he whispered, "I'm sorry, kiddo." God, I finally believed him this time. A year later, Alina cried again when Marcus and I told everyone I was pregnant. Richard immediately started planning impossible grandparent activities. Emma demanded naming rights. Lucas wanted to teach the baby baseball. Sunday dinners got louder, messier, happier, exactly the way families should feel. And sometimes late at night, I still think about that Thanksgiving at Harborview Grill, one lonely girl crying quietly into mashed potatoes believing she was unwanted. She had no idea she was sitting 3 feet away from the people who would become her real family. Funny how life works sometimes. The people who reject you teach you what love isn't, but the people who choose you, they teach you what love was supposed to feel like all along. Before you go, subscribe and comment. Do you believe chosen family can become more real than biological family? And remember, the people who truly love you will never ask you to become smaller just to make them comfortable.